Okay. Hopefully that worked. Aha, you're recording. Perfect. Okay, wonderful. So before we get started, again, this this presentation is the intellectual property of the Department of National Defense, and any reproduction or retransmission of the slides contained in this presentation is strictly forbidden. Some of the topics discussed in this webinar may be of sensitive nature and not appropriate for children, so we ask for parental discretion. So we are going to be talking about stress and distress. Nothing should be triggering in this presentation, and a lot of it is going to be information regarding some of the triggering stuff that might be happening, but we don't need to disclose anything if you're not interested, because we understand that people's stories are theirs alone to tell, and anything that is shared by participants in this webinar, either on camera or in chat, is not to be discussed outside the webinar. And also too, is this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing later on CAF Connections. We also have a health promotion YouTube channel that we will be uploading to. So your active participation is encouraged, and you can simply just follow along. So everything is good. So we're going to talk about tools to manage your perspective. And I think this is sort of a great thing to think about when it comes to January. We've all been in this pandemic for 10 or 11 months now. We might have had a change in perception, a change of heart, maybe a change of worlds. Our worlds are different. And how do we maybe change the way we think so that we have a little bit more openness to positive thinking, or changing our thinking so that our world doesn't seem as bad, right? It has been a challenging time, and we're gonna talk about how to make it better for everybody. So I'm gonna turn my camera off so we can focus more on the presentation. So we're going to be talking about defining stress. First thing we're gonna have to understand is, what is stress and where does it come from, and how does stress influence our thoughts? Then we're going to talk about how to manage our thoughts and how to change our thoughts. We're going to talk about coping thoughts. And we're going to talk about something called the personal power grid. So how can we maybe let go of some things that we can't change and really focus on the things that we have control over? And then the third one is going to be building resilience. So sometimes we forget that we need to take care of ourselves, and the more that we let ourselves get run down, the more we have negative thinking. And that's really important to remember, is that sometimes it's not the world, sometimes it's just our thoughts, and we really have to think about how well we are in ourselves and how well we take care of ourselves so that we can have a more positive outlook and feel like we're in control of our lives. And we're going to practice a relaxation exercise. Maybe we learn how to do that. So, oh, there we go, Gary. Okay. So, what's happening? Okay, let's talk about stress. If I were to ask you to put one word in the chat to tell me how you describe the word stress, or tell me what comes to mind when I say the word stress, what kinds of things come to your mind when we talk about what is stress? What is stress for you? Or what causes distress? Being overtasked, yeah. Trying to log into MS Teams. I hear you, I do, I understand. There's a lot of things when it comes to technology and how much we've had to change our world and how much we've had to change. Oh, 10 tries, oh my goodness. Yeah, no, it's very frustrating. And sometimes it has everything to do with the connection. Sometimes it's because there's 5 other people on the internet in your household. Sometimes the D1 connection doesn't work. So we know that stress comes in a lot of different shapes and sizes, and also know that stress is not going anywhere. Oh, back pain. Yeah, back pain. Pain will be exacerbated by stress. Absolutely. And the important thing to remember is that stress is challenging, but stress isn't going anywhere. We just have to get better at dealing with stress and better at managing stress. So things that weigh on us that we can't let go, things that consume our thoughts and emotions, things that we lose sleep over, that is very powerful. And we are going to be talking about things that we're holding on to. We're going to talk about that when we talk about that second big block is called the personal power grid. Sometimes we hold on to things that we can't change. And so we become overwhelmed, right? Perfect segue there. We become overwhelmed by things that we feel that we have no control over. And we're going to talk about how can we take our control back. Sometimes money is a huge issue, especially now if people have lost their jobs or have had a reduction in salary. We're dealing with that in my family right now. My husband's on 65% of his salary now. And so we understand, right? There's so many things that go on in our lives that we just have to learn to juggle. So let's talk about defining stress. So when I said stress, a lot of things came to mind, and I love that you were sharing with me. But now when we talk about defining stress, so how do we actually consider what stress is? So stress is our body's response to any stimulus or demand, and it's an automatic response. So when we, when we hear a loud noise, or when we are driving and we're sliding and our body reacts, it responds. When we are in traffic, when we're late, when we get a phone call, when we get a message, right? Our bodies, we don't say, oh, I feel like this message might be stressful. How about I react to this right now? No, our bodies do it automatically because we have a trigger, right? We get triggered by our thoughts, we get triggered by the actions, we get triggered by perhaps the environment. So defining stress is our body's response to any stimulus or demand, and it's an automatic response because the pressure exceeds our perceived ability to cope. So if we feel like we're sliding into somebody in traffic, our perceived ability to cope with that might, we might react to it. And so we feel pressure. Our body is going to go, uh-oh, we need to panic right now. Or if we feel overwhelmed, especially when there's a lot of things happening, sometimes we're doing okay. And then there's that one little thing that breaks the camel's back and we feel like, oh my goodness, I can't deal with this right now, or I can't, possibly have anything else happen to me right now. There's nothing left for me to give, or I'm too tired or whatever, right? So pressure builds. And what's interesting though is that stress can be positive or it can be negative. And this is going to be basically the premise of this presentation. However we see stress, whether we see it as a challenge or we see it as a positive challenge or a negative challenge, is going to be how our body is going to respond. With positive stress, we're going to feel the same way, but the lasting negative effects won't be as detrimental to our health. Okay, so this is really where we're going to get started. When we talk about stress, and we said stress isn't going anywhere, stress is always going to be around, but it's how we're managing stress that's going to help us sort of make or break the situations that we're going through. Now, when we talk about stress and performance, we need some stress. So when you look at stress at the very, very sort of left side of the screen, left, sort of when we're like, we have nothing to look forward to, we're bored, we've got nothing to get up and work towards, we kind of feel down, we kind of feel meh, we don't feel like there's anything, motivating us to get up and get started. But when we have a little bit of stress and we're able to, have some time to rest, and we have enough stress to make us perform, you have my attention, I'm going to work enough so that I can get paid, I'm going to, exercise so I have something to, get me going and give me energy. So I've got enough stress to perform properly. And then something happens, or an emergency happens, or a deadline happens, and you have enough reserve to rock that. So you're at 100%, you're giving it, and you're doing well, and you're performing at your best, or you're competing, right? This is like peak performance time. And then you have to come back down again. So you have to have time to rest so that you have enough stress to keep you going. But if you try to rock everything and give everything 110% and keep going, and you don't give yourself the opportunity to rest, you start to freak out, right? You start to have that overwhelmed feeling where, oh my goodness, I'm running out of steam, or oh my goodness, how am I going to keep going like this? Or how am I going to continue doing my best because I have nothing left, right? Nothing else can happen. Otherwise, I'm going to crash and burn. If you don't give your body enough time to recover and recuperate from being at peak performance, giving it some rest so that you have enough energy to go back and forth, then we know maybe, or some of us might know what burnout might feel like, where you've got nothing left to give. You're kind of at the same point where you're so bored you don't want to get up, but this one is you're so overwhelmed you don't want to get up. Like there's so much going on that it's almost it's too much, and it takes a lot more to recover from coming back up when it comes to not taking the time to rest and recover so that we can go between you got my attention and rocking it. So this is really where we have to understand that stress is around. Stress is very important, but too much stress can actually be very detrimental to our mental health and our physical health. So when we are looking at how stress and our mental health are correlated, when we're in a healthy sort of state, we've got enough going on that gives us a reason to get up. We have, people in our lives that are keeping us motivated. We have good sense of humor. We're still performing well at work. We're still sleeping fairly well. We have enough energy to be physically active if we need to be. We want to be socially active, and there's no need for us to use any type of, I'm going to call them escape strategies, right? Alcohol, gambling, drugs, those kinds of things. So we're in the healthy. That's the ultimate goal, right? Is we want to be in the healthy. A lot of the times, though, we're kind of bouncing between reacting and healthy. And reacting is kind of having a bad day, feeling a bit overwhelmed, but still, still managing fairly well. But if we let ourselves be in the reacting phase too long, then we might not take the time or really remember to take care of ourselves to get back in the healthy. So reacting is kind of being more irritable. This is where we start to feel overwhelmed. Maybe I didn't sleep well for a couple of days because something is on my mind. I'm starting to become forgetful. Maybe I forget to do certain tasks, or maybe I'm just feeling overwhelmed or sad, or maybe some of these things that I'm thinking about are getting to me. Maybe watching bad news all the time is starting to get to me, and I have low energy and I don't feel like exercising because I don't have the motivation. And maybe now I need to have a glass of wine or a glass of beer, or maybe some people are taking marijuana regularly now because you feel like you need it a little bit more than when you're in the healthy, right? Just to kind of get through the day or get through the week. So when we're in the reacting phase, if we don't notice it, or if we don't do anything to get back to green when it comes to self-care or changing in our thoughts or talking to somebody, reaching out for help, doing anything about our sleep, is that this reacting phase becomes our new normal. And this new normal makes us change our perception. And when we change our perception, we fall into this category called injured. It's like we're numb to the pain at this point. We've been living in this reacting phase for so long that we don't realize our impatience or irritability has now become anger. It's a bit of a stronger emotion. I'm actually teaching a whole anger series next month because it's such an important emotion. Now we're becoming a lot more negative. We're taking things personally. We're making poor decisions. We're restless. We're feeling, somebody mentioned pain, back pain, headaches, shoulder pain, neck pain. Stress increases our resiliency, right? We might be getting sick more often. We feel more withdrawn because we don't have the energy to interact with other people. And maybe if we have gotten used to, taking Tylenol or Advil for our headaches, maybe now that has become a little bit more of a habit. Or maybe now we're drinking a little bit more. Maybe now we're using drugs, or maybe now we're taking a little bit more cannabis just to kind of get the same sort of relaxed feeling as when we were in the healthy. So injured is a dangerous place to be because we don't know that we're there. And oftentimes people around us know that we're there, but they don't maybe necessarily know how to tell us that we're there or how to help us get out of the injured phase. And this is where change really has to happen. When we're feeling so distressed and overwhelmed, hopeless, angry, restless, that we don't know that we're there, help or talking or doing something is really important. So this is, again, an awareness. All of these behaviors have been put on this mental health continuum to help us notice or understand or realize where we are, where we're at with our mental health. And we don't often stop and ask ourselves, you know, how am I feeling today? Why am I feeling so tired? Why do I feel angry? Why am I reacting a lot more to my partner? Why am I reacting a lot more to my children? Why am I not in the mood to work today? Why am I feeling like I need to have this, you know, this huge glass of wine every night? Am I able to not do without? Sometimes we don't stop and think about it, because if we're in the injured phase and nobody's there to reach out to, a lot of the times we stay there. And then this is where we could have an illness. This is where we become, there's a diagnosable mental health injury at this point. So maybe we have more aggression or we have panic attacks. Now it becomes physiological, right? Maybe we have some depression. Maybe there's even some thoughts of suicide. Maybe we can't sleep, or maybe we sleep way too much that we can't function during the day. Now we have illnesses or constant fatigue, and we are completely withdrawing ourselves from other people. So this is where we have to sort of stop and take a look and ask ourselves, what is my body telling me right now? Am I still able to sleep? Have I become so negative that people are withdrawing from me? Am I willing to exercise? Have I been taking care of myself? We need to sometimes stop and think about where we're at mentally, because it affects our whole world. And this is where, when we're in the sort of reacting towards the injured phase and even in the ill phase, that our perceptions, when we talk about our perspective, a lot of the times it's negative, or we take things more personally, or we react to things a lot more aggressively than we would have if we would have had a really nice sleep the night before. So this is kind of our starting point when it comes to, where are my thoughts right now and how can I make them better? Again, sort of just before going on, is we're going to talk about perspective and stuff. If you have any questions that are burning sort of throughout the presentation, please throw them in the chat. But at the end of the presentation, I'll also stay back and we can talk about things verbally. So I'll let you unmute your microphone. It might be easier if you have a longer question that we can unmute. But throughout the presentation, you're welcome to type things in the chat if something is really not sitting with you properly. So let's talk about our 3 tools for managing our perspective. So we're going to talk about learning coping thoughts and changing our thoughts, right? Because we have control over that, whether we feel like we do or that we don't. We're going to talk about finding our power with the personal power grid. So we had talked to somebody who was saying in the chat about letting things go, or about holding on to things that we cannot change. And we're going to talk about that with our personal power grid. That is probably one of my favorite stress management tools. And then the third thing we're going to talk about is building our resilience. So how well have we been taking care of ourselves? How well have we considered our physical being, our mental being, our emotional being? Are we looking after ourselves? Are we surrounding ourselves with people? Are we feeding ourselves good things? So this is really where we're going to have to think about being good to ourselves so that we can take care of our minds. So let's talk about perception, because this is something that we often forget. Perception is going to be one of our most important words today. Okay, so if you take anything away from today, this is really important. So perception. We collect information through all of our senses, and then this data gets filtered through our own experiences and results in what we believe to be true. So each and every one of you is reading this, and each and every one of you will have a different perception on different situations, because you have all had different experiences. You have all had different upbringings, right? We've all been instilled different beliefs and values. And when we're part of one situation, especially when I think about this pandemic, how we're all living it differently. But when we think about our perception, when we see things or believe things or think things, they are true to us. They are our truths. But when we think about how other people might be reacting or responding or living, that's their truth. So we could be in the same situation and see it completely differently because of our different perceptions. Okay, very important to remember that everybody has different truths. Everybody has different perceptions. So how does perception happen? Well, the first thing that happens is there is an event. Whatever event that might be, right? This picture, okay, it's a funny event. Well, maybe not funny, right? It might be funny to some. It might be very not funny to others, right? There's an external or an internal event. It might be something that we've experienced for the first time. It might be something that we're experiencing for the 10th time. So there's an event that happens. Then we filter and we interpret and we give that event judgment. And our mental filter has so many facets, right? We talked about our past experiences, our beliefs, our values, our upbringing. When we think about whether we're male or female, whether we're 20 or whether we're in our 50s, whether we are tired, whether we're hungry or not, all of these things are going to influence our interpretation of the event that we're experiencing. Then, after we've all filtered this situation, we're going to decide whether this event or situation is going to cause us stress and we're going to become distraught. Whether we're reacting, right? Whether this might be something that is causing us a little bit of angst, right? Reactions. Maybe we're being a little bit overwhelmed by this. Or whether this is like, I got this. This is totally manageable. I can handle this situation. When you think about sometimes, well, back in the day when we used to drive and there was traffic, some days we didn't even notice that we were sitting in traffic and everything was going well, and we'd listen to maybe there was a fun song going on the radio, or maybe we were just taking a moment to sit in silence. And some days in traffic, we're so irate that our stomach hurts and our hands are shaking because we're so frustrated and flustered and everything. Well, traffic is traffic, and it was probably the same time of day, but why was one day worse than the other? And it could be with anything, one day your kids aren't going to put their boots on to go outside into the snow. Well, some days we're like, well, you know what, you can go outside and freeze your toes. That's okay. And sometimes we're so irate that we yell at our kids. There's so many situations where sometimes we're managing and sometimes we're not managing. And sometimes we have to stop and think about, well, why did that make me so irate today? Did I not sleep well? Maybe I was hangry. Maybe my kids, haven't been sleeping. Maybe I'm sick. Maybe I'm reacting to everything else that's going around or going on in the world, and I'm not processing properly. So there's so many things that happen within our mental filters, but know that your mental filter is under your control. And sometimes that's very difficult to understand, is we have control over our thoughts and our perceptions, but because they happen so quickly, we feel that they're completely out of our control. Now, what happens when it comes to the cognitive behavior model is that everything happens and it happens very quickly. So we have a situation, and that situation will lead to us having some thoughts about that situation. Now, those thoughts are going to lead to emotions and physical sensations. So if my thought is a negative one, if my thought goes to fear, if my thought goes to sadness, if my thought goes to feeling overwhelmed, my physical sensations are going to respond. Right? I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel sad. I'm going to feel, and my body's going to react. And then I'm going to have a behavior based on those thoughts. So if my thoughts were, that made me angry, or I feel upset, or I feel judged, I feel attacked by this, then my behavior will react to that situation. But if my thoughts are, oh, okay, well, let me see if I can do this calmly, or I understand that maybe that person is feeling upset, maybe I'm going to change the way I behave. So what's interesting about this particular thing is that we have full control over our own thoughts and perceptions, and we have control over how we behave. But sometimes our behavior is so automatic and so, I'm going to say, rehearsed. We've done this before, right? We behave like this habitually. Then it's going to happen a lot quicker, or it's going to happen without us thinking. It's going to happen because we think they caused our behavior. But in real life, or in true sort of when we stop and think about it, we have control over those thoughts. I can choose to believe it positively. I can choose to believe it negatively. And the anger management briefing series in February is going to be this specifically, but over 4 weeks. So if this interests you, then please join that particular one. But we're going to talk now about just our thoughts. Now, why do we get triggered? So when we talk about triggered, it means that we get upset by something, right? When we think about why do we get triggered? So I'm going to ask you, throw something in the chat. Why do you think you get triggered? Why do you get triggered? Because being triggered is very individual, right? Or because it's a similar experience, right? So maybe you're seeing something that is happening before. You asked for something, it was ignored, yeah. Or sometimes you don't like what you hear, right? Your ego gets in the way, absolutely. So we feel like we're being attacked, or feel like somebody's doing something to upset us. There's a lot of different reasons why we get triggered, and those are all very, very valid. So let's look at why we get triggered. Sometimes it's in response to a perceived threat. Now remember that perception belongs to us. So when we believe that we're being threatened, our body's going to react, right? That first slide is that our body believes that we're being attacked, we're going to respond. So we're going to be responding to a perceived threat. Whether it's a physical threat or an emotional threat, sometimes we get triggered because we place a lot of importance on something. We place a lot of importance on, repeating gets annoying. I'm thinking, are you talking to somebody like your children or your spouse when you ask them something to do over and over again? And that's very, very valid, right? We place a lot of meaning or importance on something. For example, sometimes we place a lot of importance on, I'm going to say, cleanliness, right? We like things to be tidy. And if somebody places a plate or a dirty plate on your countertop, we have a perceived threat here. We think that they are attacking our belief on how important cleanliness is. We think that they're attacking us. They're really not. They're just putting their plate on the counter as opposed to in the dishwasher. Kids, yes, I hear you. Kids, when you repeat things over and over, oh my goodness. And that sometimes feels like a perceived threat. You perceive that they are ignoring you on purpose. When we talk about how we see other people, or how we see other people responding to us, if you're repeating something, we perceive that they don't care about it, where really they just have different priorities. And we'll talk about that a little bit in length. But when we look at how we place importance on things, like we place importance on being on time. And so if you tell your kids, for example, to get ready quickly and they're not, then you're going to be late. Well, they don't care about you being late because it doesn't affect them, right? So a lot of the times when we have daily hassles or irritations, when we've been asking our kids to do something, or when we're tired, or when we've been cooking supper for the last, I don't know how many months, 10 months in a row, and we just feel like, oh my gosh, I just can't do this anymore. Just wait till they grow up. Does it get worse, scary, or does it get better? I don't know if that's positive or negative. So irritations and daily hassles, sometimes they just build up. And so we get more and more flustered as time goes on. when we look at unmet expectations, I want you to think about this for a minute. Unmet expectations. We place so many expectations on so many different people. We expect people to behave a certain way. We expect society to act and react a certain way. We have expectations on everyone. We place expectations on ourselves as well. And you, compared to mine, you should do more. Oh, yes, right. When it comes to other people's expectations on what you should be doing at work because you have so much more time at home. Well, not if you have small children, right? Or not if you have other things, even parents to look after. But let's talk about expectations. Expectations a lot of the times are what causes a lot of frustration and disappointment. We expect people to know what we want. We expect people to understand what we need. And oftentimes we're disappointed. Why is that? Because they don't live in our heads. We don't spell things out specifically line by line, expectation by expectation. And people are different. Remember, we have different experiences, we have different age groups, we have different priorities, we have different experiences, beliefs, values. And so everybody is going to be reacting and behaving differently. And that's really, really important to remember. A lot of times expectations we're disappointed because we placed expectations on other people that they can't meet. And feeling disappointed is our choice, not our choice, but we feel disappointed because of expectations we have placed on other people. And that's sometimes, I guess what I'm trying to say is sometimes you're disappointed because of other people not meeting your expectations. Because of how often I've taught this, I've learned to be disappointed in myself for having expected something from somebody else. I don't know if that's sad or not, but that's how I've sort of conditioned my mind. Now, also, sometimes we get triggered to avoid other unpleasant emotions. Sometimes we get angry, but we get angry because we don't want to feel sad or hurt, embarrassed, or other unpleasant emotions because they feel the same way. And a lot of the times we get triggered because we believe our beliefs are being challenged. So if we believe that we should be getting somewhere on time, and traffic or our children are challenging that, we get upset. If we believe that we should be able to, or other people should be able to, get their jobs in on time or their reports in on time, they're being challenged because, well, they also have realities in their homes. We believe that there's so many things that we believe. We believe that respect is common sense. Well, everybody believes respect is something different. So when we think about why we get triggered, do you see here that a lot of the times it's because of our own minds placing, I'm going to say, a lot of expectations on other people? So when we think about how can we change that, we really need to think about how we view other things. Okay, our common beliefs sometimes that are being challenged is sometimes we believe that if I'm not aggressive, I won't get my way. And for some people, getting their way is so important. We also believe that people should know what I want or what I need or what I expect, especially if you're a parent and you've been telling them for the last 12 years that you should expect them, that they should know what you need. But again, their priorities are different, especially if they're teenagers or if they're young children and they're I'd rather finish my show than get started to do school. I don't want to do homework. It wastes my time, right? There's a lot of things that other people don't understand. We believe that kids should obey or listen to their parents. And as much as that's a very strong, parental belief, is that as much as we think that they should, they have their own little minds. They have their own little priorities. We also believe that other people or events cause my anger. And this is, like I said, the whole premise of the anger series that I'm going to be teaching in February. But our choice to get angry is based on how we perceive that situation. And I hope that that's coming across. We also believe that society should know what I want, what I need, what they should be doing, right? When you say should, we call it shoulding on people, right? When you should on people, you expect something from people, right? And we know that expectations are different from everybody. And we believe that, being on time is important. So when we talk about placing importance on situations or events, then we place a lot of importance on time. And for some people, they become irate if they're late. And some people really don't care about being late, right? It's almost like a personality trait. We're all so different. And we believe that respect is common sense, yet, right? It's not. Should. Yep, should. Should is a very, I'm going to say, dangerous word, right? So let's talk about coping thoughts, right? So typically a stressor and a trigger thought leads to an anger generating situation. And a stressor and a coping thought leads to a problem solving situation. Let me give you an example. A stressor and a trigger thought. So let's say that I am in my office in the dining room and I call up to my husband and I say, hey, could you please bring down our son's blue shirt? And then when he comes down the stairs, he doesn't have the blue shirt in his hand. So if I had a trigger thought, what would a negative trigger thought be in that particular situation? I asked him to bring down the blue shirt and he didn't bring down the blue shirt. What's a trigger thought that could lead to me being angry? Damn fool, he's not listening to me, right? Absolutely. Colorblind, okay, that's a coping thought. that's a coping thought, right? Be like, okay. So a trigger thought is, he never listens to me. He always does this. He doesn't care. All of these negative things that I could be throwing at him. Or if I had a coping thought, what would be a coping thought? Maybe he's colorblind. Maybe he doesn't know what blue looks like. A coping thought would be, what? Maybe he didn't hear me. Maybe he doesn't know what blue shirt. Maybe the blue shirt is in the laundry, right? Maybe he had a different priority, right, that I didn't know about. Maybe he's running late. Absolutely. There's so many different ways that this situation could go. He doesn't know where they are, and that's very possible, right? So when you think about how two particular thoughts can either lead to anger or we could learn how to solve this problem. Okay, it doesn't have to be anger. The more trigger thoughts you have, the more angry you get, the worse your mental health and your physiological body will be. The more coping thoughts and the more problems you solve, the better off and the more healthy you're going to be. So trigger thoughts, they intensify emotions, right? Your physical sensations and your actions, and they may create a reactive or angry response. So how pleasant and sort of loving am I going to be if I have a trigger thought? Like, you never listen to me. God, why can't you just do this one thing, right? That would be an anger response, and it's not typically helpful, and it's not maybe the right answer. Right? And a thinking error. A trigger thoughts are typically thinking errors. Sometimes we magnify things. You never do this for me. You always make me late. Or it could be black and white, right? You never listen. You always don't care. All of those things, right? Shoulding. You should know what blue shirt. I need it. You should know where they are. Right? Again, it all depends on the way we communicate. Yes, absolutely. And sometimes we personalize things. Oh my gosh, right? They're doing it on purpose to make me late. They're doing it on purpose so that I have to go up now. And trigger thoughts could always be, we feel like our beliefs are being challenged, right? I believe that other people should know, right? People should know what I need. They should know what I want. And so these trigger thoughts make us feel anger, disappointment, frustration. So how can we change that? Well, we change our thoughts, we change our world just by changing the way we think and having a coping thought. And we have to learn how to stop ourselves and say, why did that just trigger me? Why am I angry right now? Because you're choosing to become angry based on how you see the situation. So let's talk about how we can change our perception. Sometimes we have such a mind full of all kinds of things. We have 70,000 thoughts a day, and most of those are negative thoughts. And it's always buzzing. We never give our mind a rest to go, okay, what's happening right now? Am I okay right now? So if we just sort of sit in the moment and be with the thought that we're having, as opposed to thinking about the past and the future and the present and what are we having for lunch and what do I need to do and I didn't sleep well last night. What dream was I? Oh, I can't remember what I'm. So we have such a mindful of things. So if we just stop and take a moment and rest, a lot of the times things, they come down a little bit, and we can change our perception by being in the present moment and stop and think about one thing. We can also recognize what naturally flows in. Observe our inner dialogue. Is our inner dialogue negative? You know, when we think, they're doing it on purpose to make me have to go upstairs by myself, or they're always trying to make me late, or they never listen to me, right? What's our inner dialogue saying? Sometimes make the shift. Could it be possibly another viewpoint? We already said that maybe they didn't know what blue shirt it was. Maybe the blue shirt is in the laundry. Maybe they're colorblind. Maybe they didn't hear me. And is this a pattern of thought? Do we often throw ourselves into the negative side of the thinking pattern, right? Do we always think that people or everything else is against us when really they might not be? So really thinking about where your thinking process is, where your thoughts go when you feel triggered. So let's think about what kinds of coping thoughts can we do to decrease the emotional response. As we decrease the emotional response, our physical sensations are not going to be as heightened, and we can allow for a calm response to a stressful situation. The more calm we are when something happens, the more we can solve the problem and not react and I'm going to say react to the other person, right? So keeping your work problems to a minimum, conversation at home. Yeah, right. Sometimes we just have to separate work and home and find that happy work-life balance. And sometimes coping thoughts could be things as simple as, is this really worth getting mad over? We must have different priorities. And I use that often when it comes to children, right? People in our households that may or may not listen to us on a regular basis, right? When we think about, we know that doing schoolwork and homework and being serious and taking everything seriously and making sure that every single piece of work is done is important because of blah, 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 blah. You want a job and you want money and blah, blah, blah. Kids are like, man, I just want to play outside. Right? They just have different priorities. I don't know that, work is really important because I don't have to pay bills right now. So they have different priorities. And same thing with, sometimes our friends or whatever who have different jobs or who have different careers, maybe have different thought processes, right? We have to, I like that. Keep it simple. Yep. Keep it simple. And ask yourself sometimes, why is this triggering me? Why am I being upset by this? I just asked him to bring a blue shirt down. Is this really a big deal? Do I need to get upset about this? It's triggering me because maybe I feel disappointed. Maybe I feel that work is really stressful. Maybe I haven't eaten today. Maybe I didn't sleep very well last night. But why is this triggering me? Why do I always feel like I'm being attacked? And if I am, maybe I need to think about, well, where's my mental health? When was the last time I took care of myself or had a good night's sleep? And then think about, they're not angry at me. Maybe they're angry at the situation. So if somebody's yelling at you, or if somebody's upset at you, remembering that maybe they're having a bad day. And asking yourselves, what do I have control over in this situation, right? I always have control over my reactions and my responses. But when we think about things like traffic, you don't have control over the fact that maybe there's a car accident in front of you. You don't have control over what time you're going to get to work now or wherever it is that you were going. But you do have control over whether or not you take a deep breath or not, maybe what radio station you listen to. Maybe you take this time now to have a Bluetooth conversation with a friend that you haven't spoken to in a long time. You have control over you. You have control over your responses and your reactions and the things that you choose to do to make this better for you. So think about when you're reacting to something, think about why is this triggering me? And then see if you can have a different thought to change your negative thought. And we're going to do that by looking at this personal power grid. And in every situation that can cause us distress, we have to ask ourselves a few questions. First thing, what can I do to change the situation? When we look at the personal power grid, or when we look at the situation, what can I do to change it? The next one is, what do I need to let go of? That regardless of how much I'm upset about not being able to change it, it's not going to change for me, right? Okay, so I say my job is to advise them. What they need to do next is up to them to let it go. Yes, right? What do you need to let go of? Because sometimes, regardless of how upset you are, it's not going to change, right? We can all be upset about not being able to travel, and it's not going to change until everybody gets vaccinated or whatever, right? So thinking about how can I change the situation, you have to think about what you can do. Ask yourself, what's keeping me stuck right now? Why am I feeling so upset? Why do I feel like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall? And what have I given up on? What have I been able to do to take care of myself, but I just stopped doing because I really just don't have the energy to do it? So let's look at the personal power grid. This is, like I said, my favorite mental health point. Now, the personal power grid, when you think of every situation, there are things you can control and there are things you cannot control. And there are things that when you take action on them, you can either find a sense of mastery, or you can try to continue ceaseless striving against it and hitting your head against the brick wall. Now let's look at something very simple. Let's look at, if I want to become healthier, and I'm looking at, you know, getting healthier, maybe feeling better within my skin, what are some things that I can control? If you want to throw something in the chat, what are some things that you can do to get healthier and to feel better in your skin? Right? What are some things that you can take action on that you can control when you want to get healthier? Okay, eat well. Yes, right? You have control over what you eat, when you eat, right? Finding ways to reduce stressors. Absolutely. What about things like sleep better, exercise? Yes, right? Those are things you have control over. And if you take action on them, you can feel a sense of mastery. Oh, I love it. Drink more water, go for a walk. You guys are awesome. So you know what to do basically, right? Now, when you can control these things, but you do nothing, you take no action, you're basically giving up on the things you have control over. And that is not typically something that makes you feel good, right? You have to understand where it's coming from. You can sit down and watch a movie. So you guys really understand that if you take action on things you can control, you feel a sense of mastery. You have taken yourself into your own hands. But when you can control it and you take no action, you're basically giving up on something that you have control over. Okay, so that's that under the can control column. Now, when you look at cannot control, what are some things you cannot control regardless of how much you try to change them when it comes to getting healthier and feeling better? What are some things that even if you continue trying to take action on them, you just cannot change? Other people's actions, right? Other people. That is always like the most important thing to remember. But also, yeah, disease, illness, our genetics. What about our age? Can you change your age? I know some of us want to, right? But we can't. And we can continue trying to take action on them and beating our head against a brick wall. But regardless, we just cannot change that. So when we cannot change some things, we have to stop taking action on them and let them go and accept them. This is often the hardest part. But once we have genuinely let go and accepted the fact that we have certain genetics, we are getting older, we do what we can do, and we have to accept that that's where we're at. And that is a genuinely also healthy place to be. So again, the best places to be when we want to feel in control, we have to find a sense of mastery in every situation. What can we control? Only ourselves, our thoughts, our actions. And when we cannot control something, we have to stop taking action. So we have no control over other people and the events around us. We can only control what we do. So we can get angry about the fact that gyms are closed and this is closed and that's closed. But is that going to change? Is being upset about it going to change? No, it's not. And so how healthful is that when we are holding on to something we cannot change? Well, it's not making it better to complain about it or to be upset about it. So how about we just let it go and accept what we can do? No, we can't go to the gym, but yes, we can choose to do some things in our own home. No, we can't change the fact that we're getting older. What we can do is take care of the food that we put in our body. We can't change other people. So we have to sometimes let go and accept that people are different. They're going to see things differently. So even when it comes to traffic, when it comes to other people, when it comes to this whole pandemic, what we can do in the taking action can control whether or not we do self-care, whether or not we try to sleep and eat properly, whether we go outside and get some fresh air, whether we try to connect with people, even if it's virtually. Connecting with other people is really important. We can be angry that things are still closed. We can, that we're, some of us have either lost our jobs or have half of the pay. Yes, of course, those things are upsetting, but we can continue being upset about it, and that doesn't change it. Or we can accept that. Now we just need to maybe spend a little bit less money. Maybe we need to make sure that we change where our money is going when it comes to the end of the month. Maybe we have to accept that at least we're still employed. Maybe we have to accept that, well, at least we're still healthy. We have to think about letting go of things. And this is generally letting go. That doesn't mean giving up. It's very different. Even when it comes to sometimes our expectations of other people. If we're employed, if we're employer, if we're employee, we have to accept that people are going to be reacting and responding to this particular pandemic or work or every situation differently, and maybe accept that they're maybe going through a hard time. So how can we, in our control, take action on either helping other people or talking to other people, but knowing that our expectations come from us. That's what we can control. So if we choose to let go of some expectations that other people are just not being able to meet, maybe finding different expectations or talking to those people. Mastery, you can control, is talking to other people about those things that are upsetting you. That is in your control. Whether or not they accept it or choose to change their mind or change their behavior, sometimes we don't have control over them, right? But we do have control over how we behave. So when we think about even getting upset over other people's behaviors, we have to sometimes let go and be like, that's where they're at right now, maybe. How am I going to take care of myself so that I don't react to them as maybe much as I have been, right? So when it comes to what are some quadrants that cause stress, ceaseless striving, right? Things you cannot change, things that will not change, even if you keep trying to change them, like other people, the weather, basically everything else except you. And then giving up, not doing anything about what you can change or what you have control over, and staying stuck. Those are two of the quadrants that cause us stress. Reduces stress is mastery. Things you can do, your reactions and response to every situation. So basically taking control of you, and then letting go and accepting things or people the way they are, letting go of the expectations that it will change. Expectations are very challenging sometimes, and letting go of those and maybe just not having expectations, just being happy with what is. So basically what you can control is what you think, how you act, what you do. Okay. So when you ask yourself, right, you wouldn't let your battery on your phone decrease like this, right? So making sure that you do self-care, it's a priority and not just a luxury. So how do we build our resilience so that we're not as reactive and responsive to what things are going on around us, because we feel a sense of control. So we're building our resilience. So what does resilience mean to you? Maybe throw a couple of words in the chat. What does resilience mean to you? Have you, talked about resilience? Have you heard about resilience? Because resilience is something that's very important and something that we need to build on a regular basis. The ability to bounce back, cope with stressors. Yeah, exactly. So resilience, the ability to bounce back and move forward. And this does not mean instantaneously. This means that you are rebuilding yourself so that you are learning to cope with different things, so that you're able to develop and learn how to manage situations, how to get better, how to move forward, how to, think about things differently, so that, I love it, ability to pick yourself up and keep going forward. It's so important, right? It's an internal resource. So again, something that is something you can continue building on. And I like that, water off a duck's back. You don't let things get to you as much because you're stronger than that. You don't let things take over. You don't let things hurt you as much as they could, right? So learning to manage stress increases your resilience. So everything you do to manage stress increases your resilience. So take resilience, sleep, right? 7 hours minimum, eat properly, exercise, whether it doesn't have to mean an hour going to the gym using weights, it means getting up and moving, getting your steps in, managing distress in a way that isn't detrimental. Stay connected, maintain strong, positive social network. That's our #1 factor in recovery. So staying connected, talk to friends, open up, whether it obviously not meeting in person because we're not allowed to do that, but Skype people, talk to people, open up, right? We need to, even if you're having a work meeting at the end, like have a coffee, ask people, how are you doing? How are you coping? What are some things that you're doing? Oh, this is what I started doing, and help each other out. Connection is so important. The other thing too is attitude. Gratitude and optimism are key. Right now, we could have a negative attitude and we could be so upset about everything that we don't have. But when we change our vision, or we change our mind to be grateful for what we have as opposed to what we want, being grateful for what we have makes us have enough. Wanting more will give us never enough, and we'll never be satisfied. So even just being grateful every day about a few things, grateful that we have food, we have grocery stores, we're in a warm home. Some people aren't even having that, right? Grateful that we have a job. Clearly you guys work for national defense because you're on this presentation. So attitude of gratitude is something that is essential for resilience, and being able to ask for help as soon as possible. Don't wait until you're in the orange or the red. Reach out, ask for help. There are so many resources out there. Because resilient people are typically optimistic and hopeful. That doesn't mean that they're always positive. It means that they know that even though stuff is bad right now, that it's going to get better. They're optimistic about it. They're aware of their emotions and behaviors. They know when they're starting to struggle. They know when they're starting to feel negative. And they understand that setbacks and obstacles are part of life. If life was easy, honestly, it wouldn't be interesting, right? Everybody has setbacks and obstacles. But they also have a sense of control over their lives because they have sort of stepped into the mastery quadrant. What can I do? How can I solve this problem? How can I fix it so that I don't get upset next time? So they have good problem solving skills. They stay connected with others at work and at home, and they're willing to ask for help. Very important, very, very important. So when we talk about You know, how do we cope with things? How do we take a minute to relax? Some people do yoga, some people do meditation, some people do a minute of mindfulness, some people do belly breathing. Well, if you don't do any of these things, we're going to practice one. We're going to do a deep breath. And I'm going to ask you to do this with me. And if you have to go, I understand it's 12 o'clock. You're welcome to go. But like I said, this being recorded, and I'll put it in the chat a little bit later on. So keep looking for it. Or if you're willing to stay, let's practice just breathing. And I want you to, if you're going to stay, great, thank you. I want you to just take a minute to close your eyes. And I'm going to ask you to just now focus on your breath. And I just want you to become aware of how you're breathing. And be mindful of your breath. A lot of the times we forget to breathe, or we hold on to our breath. Sometimes we're not breathing from our bellies, and we're breathing just from our neck or from our chest. And I just want you to focus on your breathing. And I understand that, you know, different thoughts are going to come into your mind, and that is okay. I want you to acknowledge those thoughts and then let them go. Tell them that you're going to be thinking about them later. But right now, we're practicing mindfulness on our breath, which means thinking about one thing, relaxing our brain, because we have so many thoughts that just giving our mind a rest is important. So now we're going to try a belly breath, and just listen to my voice before we get started. Is a belly breath comes from your diaphragm. So your belly actually has to expand for your diaphragm to ignite the relaxation response. So when I'm going to ask you to take a deep breath, I almost want you to press your belly up against your belt, right, or your waistband, if you're wearing stretchy pants, which most of us are. So taking a belly breath, I want you to inhale for 4 counts. Hold it for 4 counts, and then exhale for 4 counts. So when you're ready, take a deep breath in for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale slowly. 4, 3, 2, 1. Excuse me. Now go back to breathing normally. And I want you to just become aware if there's any tension that's left in your shoulders. Push your shoulders down as much as you can. Again, put your hand on your belly. Take a deep breath in for 4, 3, 2, 1, and hold. 3, 2, 1. Exhale slowly. 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Again, just relax and become more aware of your breathing. Focus on your breath. Now, I want you to make sure that you are expanding your lungs as you're expanding your belly, and you're expanding outwards, not upwards. So again, take a deep breath in for 4, 3, 2, and 1. And exhale slowly for 4, 3, 2, and 1. Good. Now, if you're ready, you're welcome to open your eyes and see how you feel, right? Take a minute to just kind of be aware of your thoughts, and if you feel more calm, if you feel like you have dropped your shoulders a little bit, that's always really good. But understanding that deep breathing is really something that just helps calm your mind. It helps you make more rational decisions. It increases oxygen to your brain. And this also helps with sleeping at night. So if you have a hard time sleeping, being mindful of your breathing. So stop, a lot of the times we're thinking, right? So stop thinking about all kinds of different things and focus just on your breathing, and then do those deep breaths. Inhale for 4, hold, and then exhale for 4. It really helps with falling asleep and having a deeper sleep. So I hope that that helped. That's definitely a relaxation exercise you're welcome to try anytime, and you can use it anytime. Traffic, when you're talking to your children, when you're doing your work or at a meeting, nobody has to know. So if you need some resources, there are some really important resources out there. If you feel like you need to reach out and ask for help, please do so, right? Don't wait until it's too late, or even sometimes if you know that somebody else is struggling, sometimes you can ask for help on how to help them, and that sometimes is very helpful, okay? So these are all resources that you are welcome to reach out, ask for help with, call them or text them. And also, you can, if you're not doing it yet, please follow us on social media. We have Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. And if you want to, great presentation. Oh, thank you. Thank you very much, Kira. Please follow us if you can. And a lot of the times we either have presentations or a lot of really important information daily. We post things that are quite interesting. So follow us if you can. And if you need to contact us, please do so at come to our website, right? PSP Ottawa at Health Promotion. There's a lot of interesting information there. And you're welcome to, again, there's a lot of what's it called, resources on our website as well, if you didn't get that on the presentation. And thank you so much for joining us. If you have any questions, you can either throw them in the chat, or if you want to put your hand up, I can unmute you and we can go from there. Otherwise, oh yes, Kira, thank you. The new positional mailbox, sorry, is healthpromotion@cfmws.com, because we no longer have access all the time to our Forces one. So if you have any questions or comments, a feedback survey link, I will be sending it out in a few minutes. When I stop the recording, I'll put it in the chat because it's on SurveyMonkey and I have to copy and paste that. Otherwise, if you have any questions, you can put your hand up and I can unmute you, or just throw it in the chat and we can do that. Lots of great subjects, like I said. You'll be able to see the recording as we go through. The survey will be so fun. Oh, great. Good. Okay. And I'm going to stop the recording. Stop recording.